So in moving this piece out here, this is where our T55 was, through that hole in the side here. And then we've got one bolt at the bottom, which is a 15 mil. And so what we'll do is we'll loosen off that bolt, and then you will lower the engine low enough to remove it from here, just low enough to the clearance it passes through there. Once you've done that, then we need to basically jack the engine up till we can access these two 15 millimeter, and they'll be just above here. And you'll be able to access those. One will be here, one will be there. And this one right there, there's actually a hole right here in the body. So there's a hole in there, and that's where you'll pull that bolt out. You could actually stick your extension through here if you needed to loosen that bolt to take it out. Now, once you've got these three bolts out, then they're all 15 millimeter, then you need to wiggle this thing out, basically take the top end, and you're going to pry it out this way, and you need to clearance this bottom part of the tensioner pulley. Needs to clearance right here. And this piece here, when you take these hoses and you pull them back, and then there's just enough room as you wiggle that out to pry the top towards you, and then get those two clearanced above here, and then you should be able to pull it out like kind of on an angle and get it out of there. And now that we have this out, now we can look at removing that cover. And that cover looks to be these two small bolts in the bottom here. I think once we remove those, then we can get that cover pulled off. Have to disassemble the timing belt here, and so what you want to do is there's a mark in the back cover here, and there's also a mark on the gear itself, a little notch. I tried to highlight these with some paint marker there. Might be difficult to see, but basically this edge of that tooth lines up with the mark there. So that's for our camshaft, and then when we go down below, you can just barely make it out here. I've got the white mark on the block, and that corresponds with the mark that's on the timing gear down there. And we try to get in with a better look there. Again, with the paint marker, makes it look sloppy, but basically if you get in there real tight, it's two triangles. There's a triangle on that gear, and there's a triangle on the block, and the 2 points will line up. So once we've basically put our bolt in there and turn this thing over to line everything up, then what we need to do is we've got to start disassembling everything. So the first thing we're going to do is disassemble the tensioner, and then we can get the belt off, and the belt will start coming off the top here, water pump, sprocket pulley, and then down in the bottom. The reason you work from top to bottom is because right in here is where that basically kind of holds or guides the belt in. So that is the first part for assembly, and the last part for disassembly. Here's the old belt here that we removed. Start from the top, work your way down to the bottom. After we've basically disassembled the tensioner here. So here's our hydraulic piston. And the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the hydraulic piston. Then that takes the the pressure off of the tensioner, and then you can remove the belt. So all of these bolts here, there's 2 at the bottom of this whole bracket assembly, and then there's 2 for the piston here. The longer bolt being up at the top and a shorter bolt down at the bottom. So those should all be 13 millimeter. And then for this one, if you end up taking that off, this one here should be a 15 millimeter. So we're going to change this over from the hydraulic over to the mechanical, and all these bolt holes line up. The bracketry is different, but all those bolt holes will line up, and we're just not going to install the piston when we put this back in place. And all this is it's just an individual separate component here. You can see that it's all sealed up, and so basically this is independent, so you don't really have to worry about any discussion before the fact that it's lubricated by the engine, because there's nowhere for it to be lubricated by the engine. This is a self-contained unit. So we're going to change that out. We're going to put that one in, and for the reassembly. And then because this one's mechanical, what ends up happening is you get a tool to go into the notch here, and I do believe we're going to turn that counterclockwise. As we turn this counterclockwise, this little gap in here is actually going to move clockwise. So this turns counterclockwise, this turns clockwise, and that notch, you want to line it up with this notch or this wire here, and that is, I think, maximum tension. So the last thing we need to do is we've got to remove the cam sprocket here so we can get our back cover off, and then we can replace our water pump down there. So basically, once we've got these marks lined up here, we've got to pull this off of here. And I expected it to be a metric fastener here, but it ended up being a 3/4. And I was kind of shocked because I thought it was a little bit loose in there, but that was the socket I got to fit, was a 3/4 socket. So there's the 3/4 there. So as you're loosening off this bolt here, you need to try and hold this thing stationary. So all I got going on here is I just made this jig, and it's just a piece of bar with a couple drilled holes in it, and I got these bolts for pegs, and I just fashion it in here, and I just basically manipulate this, so I've got some tension on there to try to hold it static while I loosen off this bolt here. And then once we get the bolt off, it should be fixed to the shaft in some manner, whether it's a key or a pin, so that that is what's orientating our shaft to match up with our marks here. So then we'll pull this off now, and it looks like, so there's either a keyway or a pin there. It looks like there's the pin at the bottom there, and that's basically the component that's matching up our timing mark here. So now that we got that off, what we're going to do is we're just going to remove this back plate, and we're going to replace our water pump. There's about 4 8mm fasteners to take off that back cover there and get that out. There's one here, these 2 here, and I think one down here in the bottom somewhere. Anyways, now that we got that moved out of the way, what we see is, like, if you look down in close there, and if you're able to tell down there, some antifreeze. Looks like it could be leaking from this end here, or down on there, or at the very bottom. and going down into this channel here and then migrating its way to the back of the engine, because the engine's kind of like on a slope or an angle there. So, and then there's kind of like some watery sludge here. So I think this was one of the places we suspected was leaking the antifreeze. So we're going to remove this water pump here, get that out of the way, put the new one back in, and then we're going to start reassembling all of this part here.